if we're emotionally illiterate and we don't know, we can say all kinds of things that can be demeaning or shaming or fearful to a child that you're not allowed to feel. You're not allowed to feel what you feel. Modern day world that's told us you don't want to feel that, take something so that you don't feel that. That's unnatural because the feeling is also the teacher.
Welcome to Laugh Out Loud podcast, where we laugh at our fears and bring light to our shadows. Today, my guest is Karen Winter. We are going to dive into breath work and many other healing modalities she offers. She's also the author of What Would Love Do Now? It is a book that helps you create and manifest a vision based on love for any of your relationships. Overall, I found this book to be a book about relating, about what we want our relationships to be, and a reminder that what we truly want out of our relationships is love. Whether we are together as partners, whether we are divorced, we can still be in a loving relationship. Winter Wisdoms, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm really honored to have you.
I'm honored to be here.
You hold so much wisdom, experience, and qualifications, certifications here that I would love you to explore what is being asked of you out of all the healing modalities you work with, you offer.
You know, I feel as though what is being asked the most is for us, and this can sound cliche, but our awareness, our presence because things are shifting so fast. And I think our consciousness, our awareness is shifting so fast, but to listen to that there is so much inside of us that we do know, even the body intelligence, guidance, for health, what to do, what to eat. If we can listen a little bit. And sometimes there's so much noise or loudness going on around us, but to listen inside more often, to listen, what is it for me? What is calling to me? How do I express myself now? What is calling to me? Because I think sometimes this is where people feel a huge level of confusion, is listening to this and that and everywhere. And that's where I feel being in nature, the slowness. So I find using EFT, using these modalities to calm things down are hugely being called upon. And so these modalities that I use with people are enormous for doing that. There's breath work. There is EFT, shifting out of some of these patterns that can race, make the mind race, then make the heartbeat race. And suddenly we're not receiving as an antenna awareness, but running, almost feeling like we're running for our lives, but we might be sitting here on the sofa. And Bach flowers are amazing for that too. They're so highly intelligent. They're of the earth. So I find it's an awareness, like slowing down and listening and being still, calming down the nervous system.
Right. I would love you to dive into each of these modalities. And for somebody listening who are not aware maybe of that there exists or what they're about, so we can explore a little more in depth.
I've been using EFT for about 20 years now. And I have to say, when I first started working with people that were going through the trauma of divorce, it was enormous. Just the terror, the fear, the hurt feelings, the devastation, feeling rejection, feeling fear, all kinds of things that can happen when a relationship ends. And we could get to speaking and do this verbally and get to the other side of the river of maybe some compassion, understanding where we both came from, understanding the misunderstandings. But it wouldn't last for very long. And I thought, wow, what comes back in is this barrage of thoughts that then manufacture all of these feelings of that person, my mate did this to me. They betrayed me, or they something would support all of those feelings just rushing back in. And when I found EFT as a modality, I realized, oh my goodness, this can reach in so much more deeply and pull out some of the older wounding that came before, from childhood even, about how we superimpose some of that on relationship, about what's happened, what's happening now, or this always happens to me. Now it's happened again, and how big the devastation is because we think it's happened again. And not necessarily that we're wrong, but we also could be co-creating something and expecting a pattern because that's what we've lived. So the EFT can reach through the barrier between the conscious and the subconscious mind, and energetics, because all we are is energy in this body. So EFT is working, emotional freedom technique is working on those energy meridians where they come in connection into the body, like where the wiring comes into the wall and we put our plug in and we get that juice. We are tapping into those energy meridians to acknowledge what is, to love and accept ourselves, even though this is going on, even though we feel this way, even though we have this pattern. And then moving through the releases, releasing these patterns, releasing any attachment to these patterns, releasing fear of someone else's anger or whatever there might be. And then the third part of the programs that I use is forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others. And then the fourth part, because I do have a 4-part program in EFT, is the reprogramming. Once we create a void, we want to fill it consciously, or we can fill it with our old patterning that we're used to. Not that we love it, we're just used to it. And sometimes we cling to what we're used to rather than exploring the unknown. So EFT is such an amazing modality. And I do like this 4-part series that I know and that I teach and that I use on people, because so many people have come to me and said, oh, yeah, I've already tried that. That doesn't work. Okay, are you willing to try it one more time with me? Let's see what can happen. Let's just be explorers and let's be curious. And by far, they drop into an altered state. Sometimes it's almost similar to breath work. A calmness coming over their bodies, over their minds, where they just feel like everything kind of emptied out. And what's it like to feel that? What's it like to feel calm in our bodies or safe? Feel like all of that chattering is gone, or even the nervousness, self-consciousness, guilt, shame, the embarrassment, humiliation, those 4 dark horsemen are not at the forefront, are not controlling us. So EFT is such an amazing tool to help us shift from old patterning. And that can be even from the patterning that we have from the lineage, because we can even feel a pattern from our parents, and a subconscious patterning of this is how we see ourselves. This is how we react to things. So layered as energetic beings. And I find EFT can get to all those layers.
So sounds like it accesses deep unconscious thought patterns that can then be released. So you said that the person will tap into an altered state.
Mm-hmm.
Is it through the altered state that shift happens? Is the altered state necessary for the shift to happen? And I would love you to explore EFT versus breath work, because through breath work you tap into an altered state as well. In my experience, it felt more like energy that would bring information and understanding up to the surface, not thought patterns that I would be able to describe in a conscious state, such as when you are in meditation. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. The shift. So what I heard you say is it necessary to go into those altered states? Sometimes altered states, it can be provoking when we say those words. Does that mean we've taken a drug? Is that LSD? Is that a psychedelic, etc.? What it means is an altered state from just my regular thinking mind that I think all the time and that I feel these same feelings all the time. So that we're not even aware that we're thinking thoughts and we're feeling a feeling associated with that thought, because it's so everyday. We don't remark upon it anymore. It's like this wallpaper's on the wall. I've passed it for 20 years, but I don't even recognize if someone were to ask me the pattern. I might not be able to pull it up until I was really, oh yeah, it's this. It's just there. So our thought patterns can be the same thing. When we transcend that thought pattern, so you can say sometimes People will say, oh, the negative ego, who's always in charge and always driving our car, driving our boat, is stepping aside. We could say it's dying a death. And sometimes when we know we're going to do something for the first time, we get nervous around it because we're going to have to let go in some way. So the altered state is some way for us to even witness ourselves, even witness that former self that was even a half an hour ago before you started breathing. Oh, I was so tense in here and I took this so seriously and I was thinking this and thinking this. And now that those thoughts have fallen away and my body's in alignment with this spaciousness, I'm witnessing myself. I can now see myself. So it's a shift in awareness. Oh, I was listening to my thoughts and I was feeling all of that and I had my nose kind of stuck to the wall in the corner and so like this. But when I look like this and I breathe, I'm realizing there's a whole room around me. There's a whole wide variety of thoughts that are available to me. There's a whole wide variety of other emotions available to me. And in some ways, we can become more aware and therefore more self-responsible and take responsibility for it and say, I can change my mind. I can change this. I can shift this. This is what it's like to be in it. This is what it's like to be out of it. Without that altered state, sometimes then it's just a theory and we're talking about it. What would that look like? What would that feel like? I can't even imagine it. Using our imagination, this is how we get excited. We think about a trip we want to take or something we want to create, a painting we want to paint. And we can feel kind of a juiciness and excitement. Oh, that sounds so great. I'm excited. We haven't left the building yet. We're thinking thoughts that we got excited about. Sometimes in everyday life, we feel stuck in what we're doing, so we can't imagine our way out of it or to make changes necessary. When we do breath work in EFT, it is arresting that constant chugging thinking mind to where now there's a spaciousness, maybe a blank slate, or even feeling that neutrality. Oftentimes this is why I do the reprogramming in the fourth portion of the EFT, is to reprogram us. Who are we really in these bodies? Where did we come from? What are we connected to? What is the powerful state available to us? In breath work, oftentimes people go there. Do I guide some of the breath work? Yes. I'm wanting and choosing for people to lift out a little wider, a little farther. That can mean they start from inside just loving themselves, witnessing themselves, maybe as that childlike self going, oh my God, there I am. A homecoming, if you will. And sometimes that brings on tears. Sometimes that brings on like I see my own innocence. I see that preciousness in myself, the opening of the heart, incredible, because this is so powerful. And then when we're in that breathwork state, we've opened the heart, what we have access to and shifting those doorways in the mind are really an unlimited access of our higher self, our soul self. Sometimes that's why in the journey space, people have messaging coming in. Sometimes they can access speaking with a loved one who's already crossed over the veil or passed on, what we'd say, died. And they're having this loving conversation, this realization they didn't go anywhere. There's nowhere to go. There's just this always beingness. We are a being. In this 3D reality, it seems really different from that, right? It's so compelling and so convincing. So the altered state feels like it's a doorway into something else that becomes more accessible, especially in this 3D realm when we're programmed that this is all there is and this is what you have to do and this is, all the thoughts being programmed in, rather than children don't necessarily naturally feel or think those thoughts. It's something that comes in, and most of them don't feel great. They don't always feel joyous. They feel limiting. And so this helps us to see that from up here, saying, oh my goodness, there's so much more available to me, right?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because altered state can sound like you're high on something, but even in a yoga class, you can experience what an altered state is. It's a subtle shift from your habitual thinking, autopilot. The familiar sensations and feelings that are they're generated by that thought pattern.
That, I think, is so underpinning so much of our experience here in this 3D world, is somehow becoming afraid of emotions, of natural human emotions, which is what we're here for because we were in human form. And if we can extrapolate that being in the human form is also divine, Whether it's evolutionist theory or it's the Adam and Eve story and creation story, they're both of the same thing, because where did even that come from, right? We're always evolving conscious. We are always evolving, right? The earth is evolving, and we are not separate from the earth, even though we seem to think with our Western wording that we are somehow upon the earth rather than a part of her once we're in these human bodies. These are very natural and organic elements of the body. So that to understand how much we hold on to an experience rather than letting it move on through. Even not trusting ourselves in this modern day world that's told us you don't want to feel that, take something so that you don't feel that. That's unnatural, because the feeling is also the teacher, and that can also help us to know if someone does die, it can be the most natural thing to feel a sadness, to feel a grieving. I'm going to miss that. I may miss their face, the sound of their voice, their hug when they put their arms around me, having a friendship, or if it's your mate or if it's your parent, that of course that is natural.
Part of our biological experience as well, right?
Yes, to miss someone, even to feel sadness and grieving, right? A loss, something has shifted, and it can be a chapter in our life ending. We can feel sadness, changing a job, even if we want to. Oh, but there's some things I'm going to miss there. On every level, sadness can be a part of the human experience. How long we experience that is really up to us. Do we keep nurturing the story of that person's no longer here, rather than how do I connect meaningfully to that person and allow the best parts of them alive and stay alive and nourished in my heart? And continue to be open to living experiences in this 3D world where we are. And I think some of the Buddhist teachings are so eloquent in saying that pain is a part of life. Suffering is optional. How long we think a thought that has us attached to, I want to be back there, where that person was still here in the body, or I was at that job or lived in that house, rather than what is the beauty where I am now? What's available to me now? Because I am meant to experience this, because it's where I am. And what's to come still? If the river's always flowing and we're in that river of life, then that means, in essence, that something always is being brought to us. The experience continues, the evolution continues, the consciousness continues to expand. And if that's what we are, then we're meant to not just experience one thing while we're here in the body. And that can be hard, right?
Right.
So we think a lot about it. Oh, that keeps me safe, or I know this and therefore I don't want it to change. Absolutely, that part of us that has to trust ourselves and trust life unfolding, trust something greater than self. Trust is huge part of being here in a body.
Yeah. And recognizing that our thoughts are very powerful and every experience is valid, there is always a paradox simultaneously happening, dichotomy, right? It's yin and yang, but simultaneous. Not this or that, but grief is simultaneously, we can describe it as painful, messy, and beautiful, and brings so much growth. What would you say about this sensation, experience, or perception that the outside world is determining the way I feel?
The polarity that you spoke about, I think that's very important to understand. That's what we came here for in this 3D world. The earth plane is in polarity. We have hot, we have cold, we have high, we have low. Also to sometimes unify those and to pull those two things together, that we can also experience them at the same time, hot and cold, interestingly enough, even in one body. My body tells me that too. But to also realize that in that polarity, you can miss someone and be sad they're gone, and also open up to joy, right? We can feel more than one emotion at a time. Isn't that interesting? And we can hold simultaneously even two thoughts, two schools of thought, if you will. Sometimes the over dependence upon the mind is really tricky, because the mind can't hold all of it. It can't understand it all, but your heart can. And every time, I think that's why the altered states, you drop into your heart, you open it wider, and it holds all of it. Whereas the mind is going, well, how can I correlate this great grieving to this great wonderful thing happening here? Whereas why is war torn happening here and all these horrors? And how can someone be happy over here? On this earth plane, that is the usual. That is what happens. But when we breathe and we're holding it in the heart, there's going to be everything, the all and the everything all at once. The heart has the intelligence, the innate intelligence, which is pure love, which is the seat of the soul. And I believe such a powerful element. And in this Descartesian era of thinking, I think, therefore I am, it doesn't reach the half of it. It can't. The heart can. And so that's why we have to breathe. And I believe that's where the altered state comes in, is turning off the mind, because the mind can't possibly hold it all. This is what leads to racing thoughts, to try to understand it. But if we hold it in our hearts, the heart can hold the polarity. It can hold the great sadness of having your heart broken, and also feel gratitude and forgiveness for this experience that you co-created with someone, and all of its gifts of the greater element of having that experience. What do we learn about ourselves? What do we learn about life? What do we learn about relationship, or even forgiveness or compassion? Because all of that is going on at the same time. Not life happening to you, but life happening for you, and that we're creating with all of it. And the mind can't hold all of that understanding. It's too limited. And in that whole material world teachings that we came from, and usually masculine dominated, and masculine's a beautiful energy, dominated in the mind. And that's why it wants to say science has to prove it. In the feminine knowing of all that is, it just is. And we don't need proof. We know that it is. So in some ways, it's merging even those two elements of the masculine and the feminine in the everything and the all of it. And that is also what we're doing here in this physical body. That there's some that are saying that this is a punishment, we're trapped here. Some are saying this is an opportunity for enlightenment. And what is it, if it's both? That we trap ourselves if we hold on to the rock rather than flowing with the river and letting go and finding out what is also here for me, and can I drop into my heart and feel the fullness of everything and accept it, makes room for it. But if we are resisting it and saying it's all awful, what do we learn from that experience? Something clearly is going to be learned from that experience as well, right? But they're not in polarity. What if they're kind of together also in the centerpiece? They're both maybe true. And maybe it's our own creation of that, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. So letting go of, as best as possible, of our analytical mind, thinking mind, the intellect, that is a wonderful gift and a tool that helps us learn and navigate and create.
And helps us find solutions. Yeah. It is meaningful and important. I don't believe it's meant to be the commander.
Right. So moving into the heart, that it is that quiet, I feel like a quiet space where it witnesses what is the way it is, loves what is the way it is, regardless of what is, regardless of what the intellect learned to judge, if it's good or bad. The heart is like, it is. Sometimes our ego, our self-image, this idea of me will try to project outside what is in here and throw it out. It's them. They are making me angry. That is happening. My husband is pissing me off, and this person is driving me crazy. Traffic, government, the world out there, the noise. Okay, everything is making me feel a certain way. Okay. Now, if we look closely, through meditation and self-inquiry and observing, you say, okay, looks like my interpretation of that is influencing the way I feel. So we innocently learned to blame the outside, but not to self-blame or to get into guilt, but to use the self-responsibility as an empowering understanding that, hey, I have some power over how I respond. Also, many teachers and scientists say about quantum mechanics, and that in a way we are attracting and calling experiences to us. So again, not to feel really guilty that I attracted this awful experience to myself, or that I attracted and created this painful experience, but what would you say to that?
I truly believe that a lot of that, and the first part of your question is feeling all of these emotions and not knowing what to do with them. And oftentimes we judge them as bad or wrong, and we don't like how they feel. And sometimes we can even be terrified of feeling that feeling again. I never want to feel shame again. I never want to feel humiliation again. And why would we? They don't feel great. Or I don't want to feel fear again. Or I don't want to feel terror again. I don't want to feel this heartbreak again or betrayal. I truly believe that, or what I noticed in my own life, what I noticed in working all of these years with human beings just like me, is that we were birthed in a time of emotional illiteracy. That it wasn't safe for us to nor did we name. We learned how to read and write, but did we know how to name what we felt? Little ones do not know the name of it. They can't. They're learning and they're regulating to that person who's taking care of them. If that person has gone through trauma and they never learned to name their emotions, to say it's okay to feel these emotions, including frustration and anger and sadness and cry, and just have that move through you, what is being taught is you're not allowed to feel that way. Don't feel that way because it makes me uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with it. Go to your room. In all kinds of ways was it taught to children to not feel. Therefore, all of those experiences, if we're emotionally illiterate and we don't know, we can say all kinds of things that can be demeaning or shaming or fearful to a child that you're not allowed to feel. You're not allowed to feel what you feel. So therefore, we don't grow up trusting ourselves to feel these emotions, and then we become very frightened of them. Then we call that shadow side. Well, okay, it's only in there and in the shadow because it has not been named. If we bring that out into light, is it still going to be a shadow side? Why would it? If we said to a child, "Oh, I see you're feeling angry and frustrated. I understand. You really wanted that, and we're not going to do that, or we don't have time for it, or it's not the time to have sugar," whatever it is. And a child is brokenhearted or sad or melting down, they need some reassurance that it's okay to feel that and to trust themselves that it's going to come in and go. One of the things that I most remember about my children is how resilient they were. When I sat with them and they had a feeling, even missing their dad, and they cried, and I sat with them and said, "I understand you're really missing your dad." What was amazing was they felt the feeling, they let it come out, and it could have moved through them, or they could have cried, or they could have made sound. And then the movement was so clear. And then they got themselves up and moved into the next space of their day or whatever they wanted to next. And that led me to understand something bigger is going on. Can we trust ourselves to feel our feelings? Being emotionally literate was just the norm. It just was, because no one knew this. We're in a time of naming the emotions and uncovering them and coming to that higher state. And the second part of the question that you asked me earlier was, how do we cross that river? And instead of blaming someone else, these outer circumstances for how I feel, perhaps that provocation is there for us to feel deeply, to understand the state of human emotion and our own divinity in the human body, about what all this feels, to be provoked, to be able to understand more about love, to be able to understand more about compassion, to be able to understand more about forgiveness.
I would love for you to share a little bit of your experience with your divorce, and not so much in your divorce because you share everything in your book. So if somebody wants to find out everything about it, details about it, they can read your book. Thinking of moms out there currently navigating the experience, thinking about getting divorced. What would love do now? Asking that question, what would love do now?
First and foremost, I truly believe that when a woman is in a relationship, and I can speak from being a woman myself, and in a relationship and marriage and then giving birth to children, we're constantly wanting to harmonize that energy. And I think that that's a deep-seated thing. Now, women can be traumatized, and that can be very difficult to do, or have that focus of energy. So I'm not saying all of us are exactly in the same place. But looking at my own experience and thinking and remembering what it was like to want to harmonize this, wanting to work this, wanting to, how are we going to resolve this or heal this when it kept mounting at a certain level? I think at a certain point, you still have to consider how you are doing in this relationship. Can you, in fact, one of my questions to myself was, can I survive this? I felt at some point that if I stayed in this level of chaos, emotional chaos that was happening constantly, that I wouldn't be well. Something my higher self was telling me, you won't be able to manage this. And I also knew that spiritually, I had, or on a soul level, I had a contract with my husband and made that commitment, that deep commitment of marriage. I also had a soul contract with these two children, and I needed to show up for that. And what I saw within myself, and it was one of the most difficult, I would say, challenging, painful decisions I've ever made in my life, was I need to adhere to this contract to these children because they cannot take care of themselves yet, over this contract with my husband because of the level of energy that we were co-creating together and how chaotic it was, that I didn't feel like I could honor this one if I honored this one. In that, moving into this space called divorce, and again, divorce is a piece of paper. If you do have children, and this is what I chose as well, was that I wanted my children to be able to love their father and myself, to have a relationship with both of us, and also to see themselves as a part of a family still, that no matter what would happen in their future, they had a mother and they had a father, and that they were loved and we were there to help them navigate this 3D world, their emotions, what this felt like, to name what indeed their family was. That helped me to give birth to an intention about how I was going to show up. And indeed, that led me to realize I'm still going to honor this contract to love him and to have compassion and to forgive. That meant in a different way than being in a marriage of living in the same house together. So we were a 2-home family, and that also meant that his future wife was part of that and invited into that. And then their children, they had 2 more children. This isn't everyone's path, and some people could scoff at it or think that this isn't okay or that's way out there. This was an alignment for me about, I wanted peace. I didn't want to war. There is no winner in war. I don't see it out there in the world, warring over land, money, power, oil, whatever that is. And I don't see it in the personal world either, and certainly not over dollars that can happen between a couple when they go to war over this thing called money, because it's never really about the money. It's the deeper part of how they didn't feel safe and loved, and they're going to take those feelings out, a bit of that revenge or that utter heartbreak and the terror of not feeling what they want to feel. And so when we can acknowledge that heartbreak and sit with it, and also understand that perhaps our partner also didn't experience what they dreamed of having in this marriage. And again, that practice of compassion and how it opens us up to be that ocean of welling consciousness, right? That has compassion. In that compassion is incredible peace. For the self, even, I can say that selfishly, when I felt compassion and understood where we both came from, why we would have the reactions we did, my God, I knew peace and my heart was opened. And that is the way for me to live. That is the only way for me to live. It's not that I can't feel anger, hurt feelings, or all of the feelings that go with anger and frustration or rage even. However, it's not a place for me to stay and to live in. It's a place for me to experience and understand the veracity, the depth of my being that feels this way, and also to respond to that part of me, but not take action from that part of me. So, again, the biggest thing I can recommend for women and for men, because it's painful for them as well, incredibly so. And I think in some ways they've been taught not to speak about that incredible vulnerability, but to cover it up. And maybe that will be a vengefulness. Maybe that will be, I'll show her, but even keeping that silent. And maybe that's jumping into another relationship for women too. There is no replacement theory. It doesn't really work. It doesn't get to that place that can feel heartbroken or sad or left or betrayed or abandoned, or the injustice of it. But when we go into those places, there is an availability for such healing. and to fill those spaces of ourself that want to be heard and seen, and from the little one inside of us to that adolescent, to that teenager, to that adult, all the parts of ourselves and all the emotions that we can feel. It is deepening our relationship with ourself, and that means incredible trust. And there's nothing like trusting yourself to feel or to respond to yourself, to what your needs might be. And also not needing from out here, I need you to see me. That's a part of being human too, to be seen and heard and to relate to one another. But for our availability to see and hear ourselves, that's truly loving and compassionate, and also forgiveness for ourselves. Because I think we can all have inadvertently hurt someone or had a reaction that we didn't realize it would ripple out and feel this way. And that we might judge ourselves or hold judgment over our heads for taking the decision even to divorce, or taking a decision that would wound a relationship so deeply. Forgiving ourselves is an enormous step, because that also helps us to forgive others who might have done things that result in those feelings.
Right. That's wonderful. So, reflecting back, what I heard is that the thought of a divorce or a challenging relationship, a marriage with children or without, is a calling to look at ourselves. Right? If we feel a disconnect, where there is a disconnect within ourselves, if we are feeling resentful, where there is a place that needs to be forgiven within ourselves, and how the relationships are mirrors to show our relationship of ourselves.
Sometimes we don't have the skills and tools on board right then to up-level a relationship to make it feel livable, doable, that we can not just keep poking at and creating these incredible, enormous feelings of not feeling safe, etc. But that can be a place of forgiveness too. We didn't know. We didn't know what we didn't know. What would be necessary to make a relationship work? And it's not like our grandmothers lived and our great grandmothers lived. It is different now. It is the sophistication that's being asked of us to live at this fast-paced life and dealing with all of these variables is very much up-leveled. And to not have that emotional literacy on board, to not have tools on board to breathe and to calm down and to say, what are we really dealing with underneath this behavior or this action that one of us might have taken? Because then that's where all the healing happens. And that's why things are going so fast. And if we don't gather those skills and tools, I think families are moving through this really rapidly, and it can be destructive and fast without saying, hold for a minute, what's going on? And because the whole playing board has changed with we don't need to stay because of safety or money, that doesn't mean that those relationships aren't still very, very vital and important, and especially for children and even for the adults co-creating them, to understand something greater is happening here.
Yeah, so having that compassion with ourselves as we navigate this fast change that will affect all our experiences, the way our education, our marriage, our work, career, finances, everything is changing very fast. And we are learning about our emotions and learning to look within and expanding our consciousness. There's a lot going on, a lot to manage. So taking a time, hey, okay, there's a lot going on. Let's just pause and look within and see. Okay, take a moment. Yeah, to reflect and slow down. There's so much more I would love to talk to you another time. We have to do this again. There's only so much time in this time and space reality. I have so many questions. We could stay for another 3 hours here.
Always, because there's always so much going on when we're here in a body, isn't there?
Yep. And overall, I think what you brought so beautifully and you always bring is also related to divorce is there's no one size fits all. And yes, we are talking here, you're sharing your experience, but ultimately we can only we can only look within our hearts and know, hey, is divorce the best way to go, or it isn't, or what is here for me, what do I really want, what do I really need? It's really a deep self-investigation, right?
Even the integration of what that information, what in one nugget can we take in, and having the time to integrate that. And I think the time out to even slow down and be in nature where everything is like right there. The quietude, the feeling, the how can we indoctrinate that? How can we absorb some new concept or a new way, a new perspective, a new shift into our life is so important. Otherwise, it's just kind of floating out there and it's going through really rapidly. But the integration, I think, is everything.
Hmm. Yeah, and also having support, I think is very valid. Attending to your breath classes were very helpful. It was very, very, extremely helpful to shut down my ego and let let things happen. So before we wrap up, what would you like to share? What would you guide people next if they want to contact you, if they are interested in your work? What would you like to lead them to?
I feel so grateful. I'm very passionate about the work that I get to do. And I do counseling work with one on one. I do counseling work with couples because of writing that book. You know, if you delve into it, it opens a door to even great skills and tools for having a relationship that we wanted to continue. So I have worked for many years with couples wanting their relationship, wanting to heal old wounds that are there that didn't get healed, or learn new ways of communicating and understanding one another to be in a deeper synergist relationship. The EFT is part of that. I also use Bach flowers in that, and I have a Rasha technology, which is an amazing scalar wave with Rife and Hulda Clark frequencies for healing the physical body, clearing distortions in the field. So we're getting into more of the quantum mechanics of the body, mind, and soul for healing. And I have a new website coming out. It's called winterwisdoms.com, and that is videos with the EFT so that you are empowered to do this. I'm doing it with you, but you're tapping on yourself. You're closing your eyes. You're going deep inside. You are moved through relaxation, and you're moving through some layers of self to release them. And there's incredible power and empowerment in that to be able to do it on yourself, but also to learn this very incredible 4-part series that will help you do that. And there's a number of different layers. There's 23 videos up now, but of course that will just keep going, from addiction to parenting to birthing to trauma to relationship loss, and to help shift ourselves out of those states that could want to linger or our thoughts linger around, and then also coupled with the Bach flowers. So a tremendous self-healing tool that I'm really excited about bringing forward.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. And just before we close, what have you experienced in this amazing, incredible 3D world that you couldn't help it but laugh?
I make it a practice almost every day to wake up and have some kind of laughter throughout my day, to even whether it's laughing at myself and not through impugning, or making fun of myself in a humiliating way. It's to laugh at life, to laugh at how serious sometimes this gets, to look at the whole thing differently and look at myself differently. And that's hugely important. I love laughing and laughter. And I've also gotten kicked through the veil a few times to see all of this in such a different way, where I've had laughter for 6 to 8 hours. And that's an altered state of looking all of this through a completely different lens. And that has been hugely life altering when I can visit that state. I might not be exactly in that state, but remember, what does that feel like to be shown a whole different lens of life than the one that I'm thinking? So laughter is enormous, and it's it's an elevating tool. It's a spaciousness. And I always tell clients and share that with couples, especially, is this is important for us to laugh. It's like the lubricant of life. It keeps things flowing and moving, and we so need it. It's just like children are laughing and giggling all the time, and we can start to get so serious and forget, in all of this programming of this 3D world, to laugh again and to have more light of heart, literally.
Yeah, so good. And what I feel is that if I can only laugh if I'm relaxed, if I'm calm, or I can induce that relaxation through laughter. And that's the beauty of it. Um, and there's this like message that we get from laughter and humor and playfulness that we are safe, right? Because we don't really laugh if we are in danger, right? So there's that beautiful way of inviting a sense of safety through laughter.
And that can mean even to have an experience that it might have felt so big in the moment. Can we look back and laugh at the seriousness of it? That's not to make fun of anyone else who's taking it serious, but even at the self. And I mean, most importantly for the self, to do that with the self of, oh my gosh, here's what I did, and here's what to allow it to be a little lighter, because I think our bodies, I think our minds, I know they do, they need that lighter energy rather than to taking everything so seriously. And so sometimes that becomes very heavy when it's so, so serious.
Yeah, yeah. I I laugh mostly at my own mind, my thoughts, the madness of it. I was like, oh my goodness. And if we pause to observe our mind, is just hilarious. And us humans, ourselves, our little personalities, our little bodies, and all this humanness, and our quirks and neuroses and little habits is just so funny. Watching myself, because I watch myself all the time. And it's just hilarious.
And that observance is, I think, so important too, not take ourselves so seriously, where we can be in it, but not of it every moment, right? We're meant to engage. And so here we are. But to take it all so seriously every moment can rob us of even the sweetness of the moment or the joy that's resting right there, just being.
Yeah, yeah, we get caught up in this like I have to go. It's like I'm here, but I'm already like, oh, I have to go. I have to go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The next, and next, and next. Thank you for being here, and yeah, until next time. I have already some questions saved to you.
I look forward to it. It's always lovely to chat and look at these things and to share.
And thank you for all you do and have been doing and your impact. I'm sure I've seen you. I've seen your impact in many people's lives every single week, right? And my own life. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for trusting me.